Good morning, Ponyville Cider Fest! Welcome to All That Glimmers, a Starlight Glimmer analysis. If you couldn't tell by a certain some pony on the screen here, we're going to be talking all about this magical light purple horse for the next hour or so. I am your host, Forward Progress, and I'd love to introduce my two co-panelists here. To my left is the lovely, talented, amazing, beautiful... How many other adjectives can I use so I'm not in the doghouse tonight?
Just all of them.
Okay. This is the wonderful Nova Rose.
Hello. I am here.
She showed up, everyone. And
where's my prize?
I have a little coffee left in the Eevee mug.
I'm good.
Okay. Fair to say you're a Starlight Glimmer fan?
Yes, I am. You know, it stings because, like, this dress is, like, super purple, but, like, you can't see it behind all the stuff.
Do you want to stand up or something?
As I knock my thing out. Ooh, purple.
It's a beautiful dress, actually. It's really nice for this season. And we'd love to introduce... oh, do you have some?
I was going to say, because unlike what Pirate Dash says, it's still Halloween.
It is Halloween.
Fight me.
Pirate Dash can't convince us.
Cue theme from Nightmare Before Christmas. Anyway, also introducing a certain fan of a certain purple pony, I think. Our good friend and one half of Rift Ponies, Mr. Thoth Penswell.
As you can see, I'm a very big Twilight Sparkle fan, as you can tell.
Well, I did say purple
2020 yeah, it's true. 2020 can't get me under my Glimmer Grandma blanket. It never will. But yes, I'm Thoth Penswell. I'm the less talented half of Rift Ponies. You may have been seeing us around this weekend. We're going to be around more. But today, I've been asked to talk about my favorite horse, as you might be able to see on the internet in the past. This is my favorite horse. It's a Glimmor. And today, I'll be joining you in my completely normal blanket, my completely normal coffee mug, and my completely normal pants to talk about my favorte horse. So I'm very excited.
Just so everyone out there knows, this is all he wears.
This is what I wear every day. When I go to the theater, people look at me, man.
And they say, "What an awesome outfit."
I was gonna say, they say that guy is awesome. I'm very excited, though. I'm super excited to talk about Starlight Glimmer today.
I can just imagine you going to, like, a job interview with
I mean, you know something? I'm going to UPS tomorrow. If I show up in these, you think they'll care? I don't know.
Probably.
As long as you do your job, they won't care. America needs its packages. Is it going to be what can purple do for you instead of what can brown do for you?
I'll be the one purple UPS carrier.
All right. So let's actually get into the meat of this panel here. So I'll tell you, this panel came to be just from random conversations between the three of us over the last several months. We always kind of toss around ideas to each other when we're coming up with things. And at one point, I don't know who, but somebody said, what if we actually did a Starlight Glimmer panel? It was probably Thoth, to be fair.
I think it was me. Yeah, I said I really wanted to do... plenty of people had talked about doing a Starlight Glimmer panel, but the one person I knew who could do a really good character-centric presentation and really be able to boil it down where it wouldn't be just... Obviously, you love the memeing and the spamming of images and everything, which you're all doing a great job at in chat, by the way. You're doing a fantastic job. Keep that up. But I really wanted something beyond just kind of throwing internet images into a panel. I really wanted something that had, like you said, meat and potatoes to it. And I knew Forward Progress would be the one to do it. And it only took until Forward finally came to me a few months ago and he said, hey, what if we actually do this? And as you can see, I clearly said no. So, you know.
And as soon as we brought it up to Nova Rose, she's like, I'm in. Very much just like
People
that.
love their Glimmer horse.
So let's get into it. So what we're gonna do here is we're gonna talk about Glimmer in the series and how her character development took place, but really what she meant to the series overall. And you are the meme, Thoth.
The meme.
Don't mind me. I'm just sitting here. Don't mind me.
I'm actually gonna switch the slide. So let's talk about the introduction of the character here, which obviously was Season 5, Episode 1, the Cutie Map. We got our first look at a lot of things here, and really what we want to talk about to go into talking about Starlight, we need to set the scene of the time that this took place here, of what it meant for Starlight to come into the series. So let's talk about the state of the series at that time. And I know, Mr. Thoth, you've literally written about this very topic. So I'm going to let you start our conversation here.
Yeah, so, college freshman me, we were tasked with writing a college essay. It was a final essay in that semester about elements of Marxism in media. About a particular, they made the mistake of giving us free rein to choose anything that we could write about. So I said, well, there's an episode of My Little Pony, Friendship is Magic, that has elements of that. So I guess I'm doing that. And then I wrote a 17-page essay about it. But to kind of dive into that a little bit, I wrote about the Cutie Map episode specifically. And specifically at that point where the show was, we were 5 seasons in, just getting off about a year-long hiatus.
The longest hiatus, I believe, period we ever had.
I think so, yeah. And the big thing about the Cutie Map is that when you dive into the themes explored, especially with what Starlight Glimmer does with her town, I noticed writing this essay that a lot of the themes explored therein in that episode, where it was about less emphasis on the uniqueness of the individual. Many people like to call it whatever it is. People jokingly call it communism. People call it Marxism. Forward has corrected me many times on it.
I tend to look at it as egalitarianism myself.
Right.
You can make arguments several ways. It's difficult, especially when you get into classic Marxist theories, to discuss it, because a lot of that is creating a government by the people, for the people, which this one is more of one person creating it for themselves. However, this is not a deep dive into Marxism. We can do that if you guys want for another panel. Trust me, I have a sociology degree. I can talk about it for days. But suffice to say, obviously, lots of themes about the individual versus the community. And really, I would say more about individualism as far as letting your talents shine within a community, or in this case, not giving up yourself because some pony else wants you to be like them.
For sure. And I think that runs really counter, almost 100% counter to where not only Friendship is Magic was at that point, because remember, there's also 30 plus years of history with My Little Pony that comes prior to that. And because of that, what I ended up kind of figuring out in that essay is that Starlight Glimmer, in a way, her ideology, at least by the time you reach the Cutie Map, is entirely counter to the entire ideology that the franchise of My Little Pony itself had up until that point. And once I kind of unpacked that in that essay, I was like, wow, that's actually really interesting that there's little bits and bobs about who wrote what part of the Cutie Map, but I'll credit it to the writer that's credited, which is M.A. Larson. I'll credit him because that is an interesting way to take it, especially 5 seasons into what was already a pretty celebrated part of this really long-standing franchise, and just say, hey, all that stuff that we've been pushing the last few years, what if we counter that? What if we take that in the total opposite direction? And that's what made her, to me, and I think a lot of people, when she first debuted on the show, that's what made her an interesting antagonist and antithesis, not only to the main characters, but to the entire franchise as a whole, really. That's the way I've always seen it, at least.
And I'll say this, and I'll come to you, Rose, for this one, of your memory of seeing that season 5 premiere and what you felt Starlight represented in that moment.
What did I think of her?
Yeah.
Like, I mean, pretty much what Thoth touched upon, like, but first of all, she was a great meme generator.
There were some fantastic memes from that episode, we cannot deny. I'm sure the chat is about to explode with them, but, I didn't listen.
But yeah, it's it definitely, to me, was the antithesis of the entire franchise, and especially in a series where, and I think we may dive into this later, I felt up until that, well, actually this is for a later topic, but
I was going to say, you're getting ahead of us.
I'm getting a little ahead of myself here. Sorry, I love my horse. What can I say?
Okay. It's
but
okay.
but yeah, it was an entirely different set of themes and dynamics to the show that had the show and franchise that had constantly praised individual uniqueness over collective, So that was different, and that was challenging to the entire franchise as a whole, in my eyes.
Like, I think the thing I found most interesting about it is, like, up to this point, Ponies had this interesting habit of going to a location and, like, essentially spreading their ideologies onto, like, other nations.
It is a critique that's been lobbied out there over the years, or lobbed, I should say, out there over the years, of is it them pushing their beliefs? And then what we had here was literally somebody putting their beliefs onto every pony else.
Mm-hmm.
So it was kind of one of those, like, point counterpoint moments, and I think that was crucial to the series in this moment, because when you have 4 seasons, which, granted, we were coming off this big hiatus, but right before the hiatus was Twilight's Kingdom, the battle with Tirek, like, Pony meets Dragon Ball Z.
That's the comparison everyone goes to. I love it without fail.
Mm-hmm. But there's something to that about how do you follow that? And I think that was the big thing. And that's why this episode and Starlight's character, I think we can all agree, was crucial to the continuation of the series in this manner. Because without this, because you can try to do another villain like Tirek, but you don't want to become samey, and then it's like, you also don't want villain of the week, because that gets old. Trust me, I've seen enough anime to know villain of the week can get old. So Starlight represented a new direction, I think.
I was going to liken it to Twilight's Kingdom and Tirek, that whole battle at the end of that, challenging the sensibilities of what My Little Pony could be, because that's definitely not, someone takes one look at that and goes, that's not My Little Pony. And I'm not saying that as a negative thing. I'm saying that as, wow, that's My Little Pony. But then when you jump to season 5, like you're saying, now you've already challenged the sensibilities of the show and the tone of the show with that. And then season 5, you're challenging what's essentially the morals and ethics that this entire franchise has promoted for 30 plus years. So that like you said, it couldn't be a bigger bad at that point. So it had to be something that sort of challenged both the characters and the series as a whole in a little bit of a different way. And that's what Starlight Glimmer really was when she came on the scene in season 5. Absolutely.
Definitely.
Also, I can add a note that, like, the whole brainwashing scene was very unsettling.
There was a lot that was unsettling. I remember, I don't want to stay on this topic too long because we have a lot more to talk about, but the song In Our Town is haunting. Daniel Ingram went to a place for this.
He did.
And he said he looked into like World War II era like stuff, like all of this that just encapsulated in this moment. And the lyrics about, there's one that will stick with me forever. You can't have a nightmare if you never dream.
Yep, that's the one.
Yep. But there is the way Starlight acted. I want to get more into this, and this is a theme you're gonna notice as we talk about this. Is Starlight's the antithesis to Twilight in certain ways, especially in this episode. She becomes less the antithesis and kind of grows in a new way. But in this episode especially, she really does.
Why did you take ours and not give up your own? I had to, you fools! How could I collect your cutie marks without my magic? But the staff has all the magic we need! The staff is a piece of wood I found in the desert. It's my magic that makes all this possible. You'd all still be living your miserable lives, thinking you're better than every pony else, if it weren't for my magical abilities. I brought you friendship. I brought you equality. I created harmony!
You lied to us!
So what? Everything else I said is true. The only way to be happy is if we're all equal.
Except for you.
Every pony has unique talents and gifts. And when we share them with each other, that's how
Quiet!
I chose that clip for a few reasons. One, I created harmony. I tried to manufacture harmony. And that is one of those interesting things about the series, is it talks about how true magic comes from harmony, from a sense of cohesiveness here. And when you try to manufacture that harmony instead of letting it come naturally, you get a situation like this, where people are just existing, but they're not truly happy. The other reason we chose this clip is we had a villain who shut down Twilight. That quiet moment, and Twilight's face as her monologue, her moment to speak, is cut off. Man, was that a powerful moment.
What a good horse.
And this is
What
when
a
she
good
was
horse.
still a villain.
But what a good horse.
And there was so much with here. We got this introduction of this character, and we don't really have very much specifically on the cutie remark. Because the cutie remark, her in there is just a continuation, and we're going to touch upon that episode a little bit more as we go on. But the thing about that is she's very much in the set of, this is the way that has to be, I'm going to make it happen. And that is this interesting thing where it's definitely shaking up the series. It's not I am doing this because I want power. Well, it is because I want power, but power in a different way. Because she does want friendship, she wants community, she wants people, but she's forcing it because she's afraid. And that is big. Because what did Tirak want? Tirak wanted power. He wanted to take and hoard over everybody. Sombra wanted slaves. Literal slaves. Chrysalis wanted to steal everyone's love. Look at these villains that we had up until this point. Starlight represented something brand new. And that was her introduction.
Absolutely.
And boy, did it have an impact on this community. Did it not? So we covered we covered season 5 here. Let's talk about the reality we had. Season 5 wraps up. We start prepping for season 6. And we realize this character is continuing. This character is going to become a regular on the series. And how was that? Do you want to start here, Rose? Do you remember when we were all in that anticipation moment?
It is interesting because it's like when we learned that she was kind of be a regular character, it's like I saw some theories of like, is she going to like either like take over or like somehow become part of the elements of harmony, like what was going to be like her key role with the series. That was fun spitballing.
There was a lot of spitballing, but definitely not all of it was positive. We were at a point, now we had Discord reformed at this point. So the precedent had been set to have a reformed villain that would continue in the series. But Starlight represented something different, something new. And Discord only got reformed after Punishment. And I think that was an interesting thing too, is there was a lot of conversation about, you're just gonna have her a part of the series now. Like, how are you doing this? Why is it going to be this way? And I think the biggest thing we got at the time, and we have to talk about this, is the comparison between Starlight Glimmer and Sunset Shimmer. And it was out there, and I'll throw this out to the two of you to start this conversation here about what you remember on it. I have my own thoughts, but I would love to hear from both of you.
Okay. Who goes first?
Third base.
I feel like Starlight and Sunset, while they definitely have their similarities, they're also different in a lot of ways. Mostly, like, Sunset, I feel like, is almost a little bit more Twilight-y. In the fact that, like, at least with, what's it called? At least, like, with the Equestria Girl series, she's almost more of, like, a main character. Whereas with this, she's more, or Starlight is more of a student and kind of, like, is used differently for that.
I would agree with that 100%. And that's something, and I think the thing was, there's the difference between the lead up and then once we started getting episodes airing in season 6. A lot of it was that initial fear, I think.
Honestly, I think a more apt comparison would have been Starlight and Twilight, because Starlight is essentially where Twilight was at the beginning of the series. Like, having a princess guardian learning about friendship.
Yeah, I definitely think there were parallels in that, and it was very much intentional in my eyes, is that she was supposed to be sort of an analog for Twilight by the time it reached season 6, where she was officially a solidified character. Twilight had already essentially completed her arc that she set out on when we originally met the character. So once we reached season 6 and everyone seemed to have all of the main characters had their arcs wrapping up per se, we had a brand new character thrown into it who needed to learn everything that they had, or at least in a different sort of way. So that added a new dynamic to the show that we're probably going to talk about this a bit more, but added a new dynamic to a show that was in its 6th season, and we all know how seasonal rot can go. So having a new dynamic like that changed everything. And even me, who, you see me, I'm covered in this horse now, when season 6 was premiering, I wasn't 100% sure about adding a brand new character to the main cast of the show. Even I was a bit nervous about that. I was like, okay, you're going to throw the dynamic of this show onto a tightrope wire with this. And, I mean, we're probably going to talk about how the fandom reacted a bit more. But for me, it took a bit, but after a while, it became clear they knew what they were doing with it.
It's definitely, there was a lot in season 6 that I think quickly got everybody in on this character. And what's interesting too, season 6 premiere had a lot of interesting stuff. I would argue that the fear over Starlight got replaced the second we learned that Flurry Heart was an alicorn. We had a new punching bag almost as a fandom. And say what you will about Flurry Heart. I mean, I think she's adorable. I don't have any hate about her, but
minor character.
I think the biggest thing people had problems with is that it destroyed, like, either fanfics or headcanons.
And that's gonna happen, though. And I think that's a thing that and we're getting into really keeping friendship magic territory here with this. Who thought it could ever?
It's almost like you run it.
But no, but seriously, let's talk about this because it's essentially you have headcanons, you have fan fiction, you're right, and it was a big part of the community. But with any series, this is going to happen. Things are going to change. Not like the staff writers are not going to read your fanfic all the time and decide yours is right. And the other thing too is there is a place for your fanfiction and for your headcanon. Both can exist. You can still love what you have out there and enjoy the direction the show took it. There's always alternate universes. Just ask Marvel and DC.
Although, one thing I do want to go note is I feel like a line that is often overlooked is how, like, Celestia and Luna were, like, so surprised by a natural-born alicorn, which kind of suggests, oh, they weren't natural-born alicorns as well, which is, like, kind of confirms, like, a lot of really popular, or validates a bunch of fanfics.
There's a lot that happens. And I think that's the thing though, is that where it's a little easier to take certain characters. I'm getting to you, don't worry.
Okay. I'm raising my hand, teacher.
Now I'm losing my track of thought, thanks.
I'm gonna say something I might regret, so take your time.
Okay. So, but Starlight, I think, became multiple things. I think we had new things to stir things up, get us thinking in new directions, but also the strength of what they did with her character right off the bat. And I gotta say, I've watched so much Pony prepping for this con. Surprise, surprise. But, yeah, a lot of it was Starlight episodes. And especially with Starlight here, like, I went back and rewatched some of them. I rewatched The Crystalling, start to finish. I like that episode so much more now, looking back, than I even did when it first premiered. And it's very interesting to see, because I really, when I look at it, and knowing the overarching role of Starlight's character, and we're going to get into this more when we get into our friendship section later, but there's something about the way they approached her in that Season 6 premiere that I think that, along with the additional things that were kind of like, you know, like, getting people thinking different ways, it really allowed for this ease into it.
This is the thing I was gonna say. Before we continue on into talking about Starlight's character, because you mentioned the comparison between Starlight and Sunset.
Absolutely.
Hot take. I feel that Starlight Glimmer's redemption arc was far better covered in an overall sense than I love Sunset's character. I feel like we saw more on Starlight's redemption arc than Sunset's, because a lot of Sunset's everyone talks about Starlight's motivation. Sunset's motivation was relegated to a comic book, which I know everyone wants to say that that's part of the canon, which it can be, of course. I'm not discounting that.
I mean, season 10, it kind of is now.
Right, kind of. But in accordance with, you know, what we can see in the media, I saw a lot of the initial the setup of Starlight's character, where she was from and where it was going. I felt a lot more of it was in the media compared to Sunset's. Granted, Sunset was only in movies and then later shorts, but it's interesting to talk about that dynamic too. But I feel Starlight's we saw more of, and it was more tangible, I guess, through the early parts of Season 6 and into Season 7 and beyond. But we're going to talk about that in a bit, I'm sure. So, continue. Sorry, had to get my hot take in.
Well, I mean, kind of going off of that, like one. I think that's the reason why I really liked Rainbow Rocks was it. I felt like it kind of went into the aftermath of what she did and like how people treated her. Because, like, with Starlight, like, they pretty much immediately become chummy. I mean, I think they reference the stuff that she did, like, a couple of times, but, like, not nearly to the extreme as Sunset.
It does get brought up, though.
I'm not saying it does.
I was going to say, and And then it gets rekindled in Every Little Thing She Does, which I think is a very key episode. And we're going to talk about the Starlight and the main six's kind of friendship that they have and why it's mechanically different from the other characters that Starlight ends up befriending. But that episode to me is very critical, and a lot of people talked about it when it came out. There was positive and negative reactions to that episode, but the more positive ones noticed that the main six, if I recall correctly, Forward may be able to confirm or deny it for me, but it's not much of an apology. When she apologizes at the end for essentially brainwashing her friends, it's not much of an apology accepted, and more so Starlight saying she's going to try and do better to make up for it. And they're like, yeah, we're still pretty upset about it, but all right. It's a very different dynamic than previous episodes when someone in the main six or Spike screws up and they all go, okay, it's all right. Apologies are accepted. And that one, it was less tangible, I think. And it showed that even when, she's redeemed, she lives in the castle now, she's a student, she could still mess up and she could still be held accountable for that. That's my input on that.
So I chose a clip for this section because I feel like this encapsulates a lot of things that we just talked about and that we're going to just continue to delve into here. And let's just get right into it.
Starlight, I'm just trying to look out for you. I appreciate it, but you're wrong about Trixie. She's just like me. We have a real connection. That's kind of what I'm afraid of. Oh, what about her? Please, Twilight. I know you're trying to help, but I need to make friends on my own if I'm going to become a better pony. But do you really think Trixie's the one to help you with that? Wow, Trixie was right. You're not really giving her a second chance. I wonder what that says about how you feel about me. Oh, now he'd be perfect. Ugh.
We're going to get deeper into Starlight and Trixie's dynamic, but I feel that No Second Prances might have been the most pivotal episode for Starlight's character arc.
Yeah, I would absolutely agree with that.
Making friends with Trixie and challenging Twilight. You're going to notice a big theme of this is part of Starlight's role throughout the entire series is not just befriending Twilight, but challenging Twilight. And I would argue, and I'm getting ahead of myself, I know, but a lot of times that is true friendship. Is having people close to you who know you well enough that aren't afraid to challenge you. Kind of like you do to me.
And that's a big thing about Starlight's character that I actually really appreciate, and we'll talk more about it later because they sort of go into that even more in later seasons. But there is sometimes that unafraidness by Starlight to be... People talk about Applejack being honest, but Starlight can be blunt sometimes. And it challenges still, even from season 5 where it challenged the norms of the series, she's still challenging the norms of the series by season 6 and 7 as it goes along when she's friends with all these people. But when they're all freaking out and when the main cast is doing something and they're freaking out, Starlight will come in and just go, well, why don't you just do it this way? Why don't you do that? And it's like, well, you can't do that. It's like, why not? And that's great. To me, that's a real person. That's a horse, real person. That's a real character, and that's such an interesting dynamic to throw into the show.
Should we?
That's what really won me over.
Should we crown her the element of bluntness?
I don't know. Like,
sure.
It's tough because Rainbow Dash gets close too. So
fair.
Fair.
Although
fair. Brash.
kind of going into those No Second Prances is one thing that I'm surprised that MLP actually kind of delved into is the idea of stigma. Like, because stigma is that really horrible, annoying thing that's like, it's invisible and isn't really brought up, but like, if you made a mistake, then even subconsciously people still associate you with that mistake, and it's like, it is interesting seeing this episode portray that.
It definitely gets into even stumbling blocks too with Trixie, and I want to get to this a little. We have a lot to get through, and I think only 20 minutes to go, so I want to kind of keep us moving forward. Right. I knew that when I put this together, we were gonna have no problems filling an hour. So, but
we may need a second one.
It's true. Let's talk about the staying power here, and really, what I want to talk about with the staying power of this character here is who is Starlight Glimmer, and talk about the depth of her character here, because the three of us, when we were having our meetings planning this panel, I think we collectively agreed that she felt almost, especially in the last couple of seasons, almost like the most human character of the series.
She didn't seem like she was built on any kind of archetype. She was just a character, whereas like pretty much all of the main six are based off of some type of archetype and then kind of branched out from there.
And not saying that there's anything wrong with that, but there is something about, and I think that's the thing about Starlight coming in, not quite halfway through the series, is having the archetypal characters to start with and developing them, throwing a character this dynamic into the mix creates just so much more fellow dynamics around her.
I mean, after all, she creates harmony.
That is the dynamic that really made, eventually, as season 6 progressed and ended, that's what made me kind of grow really attached to her character, is that, as you were saying, a lot of the main 6 characters, you can, after a while, you could kind of pencil them. There's a lot of nuance to this, so don't think I'm saying that they're basic characters, because they're really complex characters. That's the reason the show is so, the writing is incredible. But eventually you can put the main 6 into archetypes at a certain point. You can kind of predict how they'll react to a certain situation. Starlight was interesting because you throw her into a situation, I genuinely could not predict how she'd react in that situation. It's a very, and like you're saying, she's the most human. She reacts, and it's a unique reaction, rather than say, Pinky's gonna be energetic about something, or Rainbow Dash is gonna be really, sporty or brash about it, or Applejack is going to look at it from a sort of like traditional standpoint. Starlight kind of just does her own thing. And that's what made her an interesting character once we reached season 6, because it was kind of just threw a wrench into the entire works of what was originally season 1 through 5. And it was needed. Like, go ahead.
I'm gonna just touch upon this real quickly, because I didn't have time to fully develop on this episode for the panel, because again, we could talk for hours. But this is really demonstrated, I think, very poignantly in A Royal Problem.
Yes.
The map calls Starlight, and Starlight alone, because she will go with her gut. She has this something about her that when pushed into a corner, and I'm getting ahead of myself because this is actually a bullet point coming up, but she will do what she needs to do. So let's get back on track here. We're gonna get to that, but obviously the imperfections here, and all the characters in the series have imperfections, but Starlight, and again, we're kind of beating a dead horse, with this at this point, because we've mentioned already about how her character's imperfections get brought up again and what she did.
She has a lot of anger management issues.
Yeah, I mean, this season 7, episode 2, all bottled up. And who hasn't felt that way? I mean, it was kind of one of those episodes where you knew exactly where it was going the whole time, but you also related with it, and it made sense, and you still enjoyed the ride. And I think that's a big thing, is because it was very relatable.
Right. And I was going to say, I think I don't know if we skimmed over this point earlier, because there was a whole discussion about the fan reaction. anybody who's a fan of Starlight Glimmer's character, anybody that's in the community knows that when she originally came onto the show and was kind of solidified as a main cast member, there was a lot of calls of the term Mary Sue. And the thing is, by definition, that's a character that doesn't have any flaws, is congratulated and praised for whatever they do. The main cast loves them without any caveats. They're just, everybody loves them and they're perfect and they're all powerful, this, that, and the other. You look at the trajectory that Starlight Glimmer's character had, I don't think she ever fit that definition. And it's because people, we've talked about this on some of the episodes of your podcast before, Forward, but people are adverse to change and something that they love changing and throwing something new into it. So, of course, you can understand people being concerned about that, but you're absolutely correct, is that her flaws follow her throughout the series. One of the most critical moments to me in her redemption arc is right off the bat in the Crystalline Part 1, where she has this sort of PTSD moment, and they treat it, it's not like a goofy, silly thing, it's like a serious moment. And when that happened, when I watched that with, we watched that as a premiere party with Bronies NYC, shout out, by the way, that was like a real moment. And I was like, wow, they actually did that? Okay, this is different. And that kind of encompasses what Starlight's dynamic through the rest of the series was as a character, what she did for the series. She was different, and the show kind of needed that at that point, in my eyes at least.
You gave us the perfect segue that we're going to talk about trauma now with Starlight Glimmer. And this kind of goes back here a little bit to fan reaction, because I'm going to open this up, and I think I'm going to let you start with this, Rose, about one thing that people talk about with Starlight Glimmer is okay, she lost a friend as a foal. Is that really believable to lead to brainwashing an entire village?
Because it's like, I mean, I've moved around a lot. I've lost tons of friends. I've had to leave tons of friends. And and I've had situations where friends just straight up, either betrayed me or kind of turned on me. And you don't see me taking over an entire village.
You also don't have magic, to be fair.
Fair, but
at least not Starlight Glimmer level of magic.
I guess, for me, and I'm sure a lot of other people, it's the jump in logic was very jarring for people, because it's it seems like a really extreme reaction for something that's pretty mundane and normal for people.
So I have my counterpoint to that here, which it all boils down to something called cognitive dissonance. Sit tight, every pony. It's time for science. All right.
Where's my book? Where's my notebook? Don't start yet. I need my notebook.
We've got a little under 15 minutes, so I'm going to try and make this super quick because we have a whole segment we haven't even gotten to yet. Cognitive dissonance is basically this principle in social science that basically is, you ever see how somebody believes something and it's wrong, and you present them with evidence that it's wrong, and they double down on it and be like, no, I'm not going to believe your evidence. You're giving me facts, but I don't care. I'm still believing this other thing. Basically, that's all cognitive dissonance. Essentially, what it boils down to is your brain does not like hearing things. Your brain likes being right. Your brain's actually kind of lazy. As beautiful and powerful as of a computer, essentially, as it is, it's also lazy. It does as much as it can to try to make shortcuts for processing information in your brain to maintain your self-esteem and to keep you alive. It's all based on, we weren't originally in these, highly formed societies where we've built up homes. We were initially having predators out there attacking us, and if we're spending all of our time trying to create all these, think about these things logically out in the field when a predator is about to attack us, we're gonna die. We've evolved beyond that, though. That's the thing. And that's the crucial thing about cognitive dissonance and keeping in mind here. So with Starlight Glimmer, I've always contended, I feel like it's very much that. She lost this friend. It was a very traumatic experience. It was her only friend. We don't get to fully see the in-between. But I think it's safe to say that once she got that idea in her head, especially as young as she was, if she gets shunned more, even when she gets information to the contrary, it's hard for her brain to accept it. It's hard to accept that I can do this. And yes, it's very extreme, and I won't deny that. But it almost has to be in a series like this to make that point of it. And it leads people to do other horrible things that we wouldn't think that that people were capable of. You know, we're a nation of unrest right now, obviously, and it's time for us to come together and realize we all have this, but we also can be better than this, and I think it's crucial. And Starlight's character arc, I think, is evidence of if we all can just think a little more critically, maybe we can grow together.
Yeah.
I'll get off my soapbox now.
I was about to say, and that's keeping friendship magic.
Thanks for watching. All right.
Yeah, right.
So, but the other point I wanted to make here is that Starlight throughout the series shows a lot of this anxiety with bravery that also makes her very relatable. She gets very anxious about things, but she also has the bravery to take action. We mentioned Royal Problem earlier, as I think she was nervous. Well, we know she was nervous because of her dream, where she had, essentially, Nightmare Moon return in her dream, and then Celestia goes to Daybreak. Like, it's just, whoa. She has that inner anxiety, but she also had the bravery to take action when she needed to. And I picked a clip for this quick. We have a lot to get through, so I'm going to go right into the clip here.
So, what kind of plan were you thinking? Without magic, I have no idea. But no pony else is coming, so some pony better come up with something. Any pony? Anything? This throne. If we get into the hive and destroy it, can we get our magic back?
Uh-huh. Well, that's a terrible plan. How are we even supposed to get to the hive?
We walk?
I haven't walked that far in a millennia.
Starlight doesn't know what to do. She doesn't have magic. And let's face it, we've discussed this. That's been her crux. That's been her, like her crutch. It's the thing that she always goes to up until this point.
Yeah.
And she doesn't know what to do, and she's looking to everybody else. You can tell she has that inner anxiety in that moment of, I need to find out from somebody else what to do. No pony else is able to give her something. She doesn't give up, though. She still keeps moving. And I think this is a very big reason why people connect with this character. Because we all have anxiety. Trust me. I'm diagnosed with generalized anxiety disorder. I have it. But I still move forward every day like we all have to. And I think all of us deal with anxiety to an extent. And that's what makes this character so relatable, is there's anxiety, but despite her anxiety you see over the course of the series, she manages to still move forward and be brave.
Right. There's plenty of times I can admit to this. I have my own social anxieties about myself. Even when we do the Riff Pony stuff, we can be silly funny. I could still feel anxious about that. I could still feel anxious about putting myself in front of a lot of people or having to lead something. But full disclosure, there are times when I think about the sort of challenges that Starlight has gone through in doing that. Anxiety, like you said, anxiety with bravery, anxiety in leading, because she has plenty of that, especially after season 5, all trying to face over that and eventually prospering with that leadership role by the end of season 6, by the end of To Where and Back Again. But there are plenty of times, full disclosure, where I don't just dress up like this for the joke. I really do feel just a palpable connection with a lot of the emotions that Starlight goes through in that. So I think that's why, just like I said, beyond all the memes and everything and all the GIFs and posting silly pictures of her, there is a connection there with a lot of people, and I think that's the sign of an incredible character, and like you said, an incredibly relatable character. So
Absolutely.
precisely.
All right. So we've got about 6 minutes to go. So we're going to go in this last segment. It's going to be a little bit of lightning round. But I wanted to end on talking about the friendships that Starlight has, because I feel there's a lot to learn by looking at the different types of friendships she has. And we have to start with Trixie. There's no other place
Of course.
to start. I mean, Trixie and Starlight's relationship is super real, first of all. They come together through this common bond of kind of messing up, being outcasts, so to speak, and coming together through that. But they're also very, I'm going to say it again, they're also very human. They argue, but they also have each other's best interests at heart. And I think the one episode I'm going to point to mostly is Student Council here, about how Trixie, like Starlight, was so wrapped up in her work, she was neglecting her friends, but Trixie stood by her and forced the point of, you know what? You're overdoing yourself to the detriment of every pony else, but I'm still going to be your friend, and I'm going to point it out to you. And it's like I said earlier, sometimes you need that from your friends, that blunt honesty.
Right. I've said it in meetings that we've had about this panel. No good friendship is perfect, and in the friendship between Starlight and Trixie, you have two very clearly imperfect people, horses, whatever you want to say, but that is kind of what draws them together. It is their past mistakes, their past trauma, and they bond over that. Very clearly, that's what they bond over immediately. The first time they unknowingly meet each other, it's like, yeah, we've both messed up. And that's kind of the building block it's built off of. And even when they messed up, they can point it out to each other. And they can argue and they can be mad at each other, but that is a friendship. That is a true friendship, is that you can overcome that, even as imperfect people. So,
anything you want to add on the Trixie front?
I think I pretty much got into it with the whole the stigma thing.
Yeah, stigma, definitely. Quickly, I want to mention Sunburst. The thing about this one, obviously, is a lot of this was conquering trauma, a childhood friend that you managed to stay in contact with, but they are two very different ponies. And I think it's important to note that. We see that in Uncommon Bond, which is the episode I took this from, and how heckin' cute are both of them in this image. Can I just say?
She's so good. They're both so good.
But that you can still be friends with people that you have differences with, and I think that's the big takeaway with Sunburst.
Well, the one thing that I will say is kind of interesting is them teaching the idea that, like, sometimes you and a friend from a long time ago, if you do reconvene, like, that person may not be the same person that you were friends with 10 plus years ago.
Absolutely. And sometimes you can still manage to have a strong friendship even with that. Sometimes it won't. I mean, sometimes people evolve into different iterations of themselves, and you have to recognize when you want somebody in your life, and when you don't. But Sunburst is obviously an option, an example of when to keep somebody in your life.
For sure.
So, this one, I just love that this happened. Mod Pie. Another example of seemingly different characters. I mean, you didn't really necessarily see this coming, but they managed to connect over unlikely things. And sometimes it can be the simplest, most crazy thing. And Pinkie Pie just wasn't getting it in this episode, you know? She wasn't when they first become friends in Rock Solid Friendship. But, like, kite flying. So random, but so adorable. And exploring the rock caves together. It's like you can find unsuspecting things to connect with people over. And I think that's the big thing here. I'm sorry, I have to move on because we are almost done. Real quickly, Spike serves as a great a great person for her to connect with in a lot of the season premieres and the finales. Because they are both part of the main cast, but somehow separate from it. And they can bounce back and forth off of one another. Main six.
Sure.
Somebody go on this point. Who's not me, because I've talked enough.
What I can say, really quick is I mentioned it earlier. The main six, even though Starlight is friends with them and obviously is good friends and student of Twilight and eventual, not equal, but sort of equal with her. The main six feel very separate from the relationship. She's not friends with the main six like Twilight is. There isn't that same like inseparable connection. They're almost like friends of a friend, so there's a connection there by default. But as you can see, you don't see her often with one of the main six. People ask why there aren't episodes with her and some of the main six together just by themselves. It's because she doesn't have that connection. She has that sort of connection that Twilight has with the main six, that she has that connection with Trixie or Sunburst or Maud. That's why you see them together, because that's their main six. And a lot of that is based on the little bits and bobs that they related on. You know, their trauma, their random interests that they might have that just happen to intersect. So in a way, you know, the main six is the main six, but the previous characters we talked about, your Trixies, your Sunbursts, your Mauds, your Thoraxes, and even you could argue Discord, there's something there as well after the season 6 finale. That's Starlight Glimmer's main six per se, to me at least.
I'm good. We're out of time.
Oh, okay. So yes, we are. The one thing I want to say though is Starlight definitely made herself known. She had, God, this image, this moment in the finale was just. Starlight changed the series, and I think for better. And I think the thing is that we can look at this character in so many different ways, and we had a whole hour and didn't even get to all of it. So,
right.
All right, we got to get off of here. So,
okay.
I will tell you, we have more to talk about with Starlight. I will tell you in advance, this panel has been approved to run again at TrotCon Snow Day in December. So we'll be back, and we'll probably try to touch on the stuff we didn't get to in this one. Real quick, though, we'll let everybody have their moment to sign off here. So thank you again for being here, Miss Nova Rose.
Thank you for having me.
Always. And Mr. Thoth Penswell, a pleasure as always.
This was an absolute blast talking about just the character that means most to me from the show for an hour, and we still didn't get to like half of what we were going to talk about. It's great. You can see us at Community Guests Q&A later today, closing ceremonies, and I'm going to be on Mad Lib Pony Theater, which is right after this,
30
run
minutes
by Forward Progress right here.
Yep, I am also Forward
and
Progress.
all the
Sorry, go ahead.
I was going to say, all the praise, the guy who helped put this together.
Aw,
Forward Progress. You're the best. Thank you for having me on. This was great.
So we'll see you back in 30 minutes for Mad Lib Pony Theater. And then after that, we've got Keeping Friendship Magic Live coming up today as well. So thank you so much to everyone in the chat for being here, everyone who watched. We love you. Continue to enjoy your Cider Fest. Continue to support the vendors in this great convention. And we will see you all later.